All right, we're ready to go. Can I interrupt the conversation over there, if you don't mind? Okay, welcome to the Menlo Park Fire Protection Board meeting, December 17, 2024. We're starting right on time at 7 o'clock, imagine that. And we'll start off with roll call, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director Crowley? Present. Director Solano?
Here.
Director Bloom?
Here. And next up is Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the first topic up is public comment for things that are not on the agenda. And we have an esteemed guest here tonight, Lynn Bramlett, who has a public comment. Floor is yours, Lynn.
So, good evening. I'm Lynn Bramlett, and I'm speaking tonight in my role as a founding member and the leader of Menlo Park Community Ready, also known as MPC Ready. I've also been the primary funder of MPC Ready since its inception. So, as you know, it's an all-volunteer, community-based disaster preparedness organization that focuses on building awareness, knowledge, and the motivation for individuals, households, and neighborhoods to get prepared for disasters. We have accomplished much since January 2020 when we launched. I'm letting the fire board know, and I've just let the city council know of Menlo Park, that I've announced my plan to retire from the MPC Ready leadership. To the current board, I announced this and key Menlo Park staff, and I announced this intention in October. So I am supporting the transition effort and actively involved, and that's progressing. I look forward to the way a transition can foster new ideas, new energies, and new people getting involved. Now, here's my key point for your group. I believe that my retirement is an opportunity for a needed, fresh approach to the MPC Ready organizational model. Specifically, I would like to see and hope to see new bylaws that include reserved board seats for the city of Menlo Park and the fire district. I believe a collaborative governance model would offer many benefits to our government, also reduce concerns and possible risks, and to our community. This approach is already in place in Woodside and Portola Valley, and I have details that I will be sharing with stakeholders. It is an honor and privilege to serve my community. It has been an honor and privilege while getting to know so many more people in the area, including yourselves. I have personally ensured that MPC Ready is funded sufficiently for day-to-day expenses and more through 2025 and likely beyond. I want to thank everyone who contributed to MPC Ready's success and accomplishments to date. The list is long. Tonight I focus on Tom Pressing for the idea to start MPC Ready and for his contributions to our community and our success. So I wish everyone involved the best. I'm retiring, but not, disappearing. And I will now stay as long as I can for your meeting until, I fade. And I also congratulate directors Crowley and Solano for their new term.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. And Lynn, on behalf of the board, I would just thank you for your service and for your innovation in starting MPC Ready. So thank you for what you've done for the community.
I'd say thank you for caring. I think that's really key. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment for things that are not on the agenda? I know that we're not on the agenda or on the agenda.
I'm not sure I'm on the agenda, but I'll turn it into the clerk and then she can decide.
Okay, why don't we go ahead with the chief's report and then we'll just open up public comment for things not on the agenda.
That's great. Members of the board, our honored guests that are here today, and any members of the public that might be watching us via Zoom. Happy to share with you the report for December, the fire chief's report. Really quickly, facilities update, you have attached a Station 1 update. The new wording is in there, as we had talked about at the last meeting, that identifies exactly what the board has approved, the concept of a plan, and then directive 2 for moving forward with the expenditure of just over $1 million on architectural design processes. The only significant updates besides, really, that's in the report, is we did submit our request for exemption to the city of Menlo Park from CEQA. It was declined by them. We're not surprised by that, so we'll have to go through the regular California Environmental Quality Act review process. It's a matter of some time and money, which was, like I said, expected. Also, the project schedule at the bottom, you can see the projected ending date had been in March of 2032. It's now been moved up to October of 2031. So if you all want to see it to fruition, you have to get reelected quite a few more times, but hopefully everyone will be around for the groundbreaking, whether you're sitting at the dais or a member of our public. So excited for that day when it comes. Updates on recruitment and promotions. We had finalists for our administrative specialists today, 3 finalists. We did select somebody and an offer should be out to them. We'll see if they accept, and we have to go through that reference checking process. Mechanic is currently open. I think we had at last count about 12 applicants. It should be closing soon. Fire captain, we're going to start accepting now. We have opened up applications. I don't know if we've had any potential fire captains apply. It's just an internal promotion process. Other updates, community engagement unit, lots to share on that. And even some new metrics for you coming from Amandeep on community education. But some of the updates of the things we've done, as we do every month, lots of monthly classes held for CPR, first aid, Red Cross Ready, Stop the Bleed. We had a CERT holiday get together and about 40 of our CERT team members attended, which was great. CPR class for staff at Oaknote School. Red Cross Ready class for about 80 people in our Belhaven community. We had a CERT exercise at Meta. It was an earthquake preparedness scenario where we worked with the emergency prep group at Meta and had our CERT members respond in to do what CERT members would do in a situation like that. You know, evaluate the building, evacuate patients as they could do. So really great and exciting drill for them. So I think that's the reality, as we all know, that when the big earthquake comes, we're going to be dependent on our community volunteers to raise their hands and step forward and help out. This is just kind of a public education snapshot as we're coming to the end of the year. These are statistics from Amandeep, just as far as the number of people that we touched in our outreach into our community. So relative to station tours and presentations, 1,810 people. Our fire marshal safety pop-ups, 419 people. These are people that actually walked by the table and stopped to talk to us. It doesn't include all the people that didn't make eye contact with us and walked by. The number would be in the thousands, but the Station 6 museum, we had 140 people go through on our Saturday visits. School presentations and programs, 715 students. Contacts during our fairs, festivals, and events, a little over 4,000 people. And those are, again, people that stop by the booth. So really great. Also, we've expanded our social media reach from January 2024 till now. An increase in our followers across basically 3 platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and X or Twitter. We went from about 5,100 up to almost 5,900 as far as followers go. The great part is the average post engagement increased by 608%. that's somebody liking it, commenting on it. I had to have Amandeep explain to me exactly what all those things meant, but it means that the stuff we're posting, the people that we're actually are reviewing it are actually commenting or engaging. So, I know that's been a topic of conversation as we've gone through the strategic plan and just in talking about our e-prep actions, about continuing to do our outreach. So it's a work in progress and quite a bit's happened since we hired Amandeep and other folks. So good news in that respect. Continuing on strategic plan update, we had a special meeting just this past Tuesday with the board and our consultants here. So we are making some modifications to the strategic plan and hope to bring it to the board for adoption in our January meeting. Fire response analysis report is attached. There's no unusual changes in our data in there. That will be at some point in time also part of our strategic planning processes under the board and chat a little bit more with you about establishing some reasonable metrics. And we'll see that fire response analysis change appropriately when that time comes. California Task Force 3 had its administrative readiness evaluation on 2 days, November 21st and 22nd. This is a 3-year evaluation that occurs. It's a big deal. A number of folks come in from FEMA and from other agencies that have task forces and basically do a review of us, and the results were really glowing. So just kudos to our staff that works out at the warehouse, our internal staff. A lot of it is fiscal related reporting here that happens over at our admin building, and then our partner agencies that showed up as program or I'm trying to remember the leads of the different parts of the task force showed up from all the different agencies. So really nice job to everyone that works in that program. We had the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, a little outreach with the Ecumenical Hunger Program in East Palo Alto. We had 8 or 9 staff members that went down there and helped pack up bags for families and serve and load bags into cars for probably about 3 hours. It's just, and the need for that community down there is still very high, and everyone was very appreciative. It was a nice way for us to connect with our communities. Coffee with the Fire Chief is a new program I just started. This is part of my personal outreach and connecting with our folks in the fire stations on a smaller basis rather than just my quarterly Zooms. Chief McDonald and I go out every Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock or so and go and sit at a firehouse and just have, anything's fair game, questions and answers with the fire chief. So some of it's personal questions, some of it's rumor control, some of it's wondering just what's going on. So we have had 3 of those already, and they're gonna go on from now until infinity. It's just like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Once we get done with everyone on every shift, we'll start all over. So that's been successful. Those 2 outstanding staff reports are still on my radar for future meetings. Incidents, I didn't have anything on there, but we did have one that occurred on December 12th. This was a structure fire in the 500 block of Maury Avenue in Menlo Park over in the Allied Arts neighborhood. This is a fire that spread, it looks like, from barbecue to the deck and then up into the attic. There was a decent amount of structure loss to the tune of about $120,000. So they had a really good stop, but as we all know, construction costs $120,000 necessarily by a whole lot, but good stop by our crews, and that concludes my fire chief report.
Thank you very much. And it looks,
Your comment.
sure,
One thing on the chief planning report for the metrics, the schematic, the timeline for when things are gonna come back before the board. One of the things I want to highlight for the board is that if you look at item number 55, we talked about authorization to proceed with construction document. It's gonna be kind of a critical meeting for the board to kind of look at and to circulate whatever comments we have about the project at that point in time, so that the project can go forward. If we're gonna have that that's what we got approved going forward, so I think I need to look at the finances.
Finances.
It's gonna be important.
Chuck?
I have a couple of questions. Let me start with the recruitment thing. The administrative specialist, what position is that?
That is, and I'll just use names because it will make more sense. We used to have, why am I blanking on her name, a permit tech?
Danielle.
Danielle, thank you. Sorry, as I get older, names are hard. Danielle left a permit tech position and went off for another opportunity in Palo Alto. We made some modifications to her position, had a recruitment. Janie was successful in that, so it created an internal vacancy for the administrative specialist. We used that administrative specialist vacancy to provide staff support for the four of us that are upstairs, myself, Francine, Dan, and Aaron, who have not had an administrative assistant since we came here, so that is the position. I hope does that answer your question, Director?
I guess so. So this is a new position essentially. This is like a secretary or a staff support person for the core.
Yeah, it's not it is a new position for us, but it's an existing position that we repurposed over from doing administrative support at the front. Because we had both Janie and Danielle. So, remember Janie's name. We had both of those folks up front, and there just wasn't a need there for the support, the administrative support, so there was a significant need for us upstairs. So it's new for us, it's not an additional expense or an additional allocation.
Well, it is insofar as we're not spending the money now and we're gonna start spending the money, so that's an additional expense. I mean, I hate when we talk about like, oh, it doesn't cost us anything. It does cost something. I mean,
It's already budgeted, right?
It's budgeted, and I believe
Sure.
we addressed the classification of that about 3 meetings ago. So it was voted and approved at the board.
okay, and let me ask about the mechanic then. What's the mechanic position?
The mechanic position is it's the third mechanic position that we had added. Our person that we placed in there did not pass probation, so we have vacancy. And we're moving to fill it.
So, and could you just tell us real quickly about the process? You met with them and just said, sorry, we don't like you and.
No. I mean, anytime, I mean, it's never, and I don't really want to talk about specific details about an individual, but just in the probationary process, it's ongoing and interactive. There's always engagement with the supervisors and the employee, and if they're struggling, we meet with them, give them performance improvement plans, and keep working with them, trying to make them successful. And sometimes somebody doesn't have the competency, or who knows, fill in the blanks. And so, yeah, it's not, it was a long, continuous process of trying to help the individual be successful, which is the case with just about any time we have a probationary dismissal.
Okay, and I wanted to ask also about the fire station update. I was concerned before about how this was being presented, and I'm still a little concerned about this. Because it sounds like some of these things are a done deal. For example, the second bullet at the top of the page mentions a training facility. But I don't know what we're talking about. The board's never talked about how many square feet, how many stories, how much money is going into the training facility and so forth. When will we get a chance to talk about these things?
Sure, and I don't know if you want to address it during facilities or how,
We can do both,
okay.
you can kick off, or I can.
The items that are here in the bullet points were all presented to the board at the June 11th meeting conceptually. It's a 5-story training tower. I know the square footage was on there. I don't remember what it was. But all of these items were on there, and it's part of the design process now. Ultimately, the board's gonna have an opportunity to engage, scale it down if the desire is there. To change, positions like that, but none of all of this was shared with the board and was in the architect's conceptual designs and the presentation that was made to the board.
You had the two choices.
Shared with the board is not approved by the board, I'm just saying that.
But we voted on it.
Sure.
Can I finish my questions, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. And then, I wanted to ask also about the, in the next one on the funding, the fourth bullet down, has 3.2 million, 3.3 million for things that are already committed and so forth. But I tried to find that number in the financial report here, and I couldn't. Where does that 3.3 million come from?
That is, I won't, because I don't have it here, that number is other projects like Station 77 that is going right now. These are all items that are gonna be pulled out of the CIP fund.
But the CIP fund doesn't have that number,
I'll have to get back to you with what that total amounts to and what that's made up
how
of.
it's calculated.
Yeah, it's a combination of projects there that are in place, in bidding, a bulk of it is Station 77. I don't remember what else, but we'll get that information to you.
Okay, then the last question I have relates to the update right below that. The planning department got back to you about the plans you had submitted. And I assume you submitted a mention of a 5-story training facility. And I was curious to know what their comments were on the 5-story training facility.
I don't know that we received any feedback. I'm sure we will. But we didn't receive any feedback on the scale of that. You know, I had talked with the city manager before we started the project, and we were committed to not having it be any taller than the existing tower. So we'll have to see. And my guess is there'll probably be some community feedback when we start having the community meetings also about that.
Is the current tower 5 stories tall? Well, that were all my questions. Thank you.
Sure. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think, if you look at the timeline, I think it can give you some idea where board is gonna have, considerable, conversation, or should have considerable conversation as we reach those phases. Regarding the, planning, if you notice on the schedule, it started this year's, first quarter, plan documents being submitted to the city. And that process is a pretty lengthy process and is not scheduled to really get completed until around the second quarter, or third quarter of next year. At that time, when the plans come back from the city, with any revisions and et cetera, the board is gonna have to authorize to proceed the construction document. At that particular time, I assume there will be a presentation from staff regarding the status of the project at that point in time. And the board will receive documentation of where things stand before our meeting during the second quarter. So this schedule is a good tool to kind of refer back to when it's lost in the process.
Any other directors have questions or comments? Okay, we will move on to approval of the consent calendar. Before we do the approval of the consent calendar, I would just point out to the board members on item 5 of the consent calendar, we don't really approve the certification. There's a subtlety, the certification of the November 5th election, since we only had 2 members, or 2 people that ran for it, Rob and Director Crawley and Director Solano. They are essentially appointed instead of certified. So the appointment resolution was circulated by email. You should all have that appointment resolution. So when we do the consent calendar and we vote on approving item 5, we'll be approving the resolution appointing the 2 of them as directors.
I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions on the consent calendar? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, so we have unanimous approval on that. And then the next item is if I have to find in my stack here, is the swearing in and presentation certificates for the board members appointed to the office in lieu of being elected.
Who's there?
That is Director Solano and Director Ferrari. And we have both the certificates, and I get the honor of essentially doing the oath of office for you. So I believe we're supposed to stand for this as well. And I will go slowly so the two of you can keep up with me, because I have it written and you don't. So I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
and that I will
the duties of it.
that I will.
Well, and faithfully discharge the duties.
I'm trying not to.
Okay, congratulations. I gotta see which one's which.
That's okay.
Director Crawley
And let's get a good
Don't we
picture.
have to sign one too?
and Director Solano.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have you sign. You don't even hold up.
Oh.
Cool, we got something.
1, 2, 3. All right, very nice.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you for
I remember mine being done by Zoom.
With the mask.
No, Zoom, and I think my arm was in a big old sling at the time.
Yes.
When you get a chance, you wanna
Because I
sign?
couldn't put my arm up either.
That's what I was looking
Yeah, and here, sign this.
Okay. All right. And we will now move on to the regular agenda. And item number 7 is adopting a resolution amending the.
I'd like to move an item forward, since we have some people here that are waiting to speak. I'd like to move item number 10 to number 7 and 7 down to 10.
Okay, well, it'll be easier just to move 10 up and then we'll just pick up from
Oh,
7.
okay, that's
on
fine.
down.
Okay, great, thank you.
Rather than swapping them. Anybody have any objection to moving that up?
No.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I missed that.
we're moving item number 10 up on the agenda.
And
And we're going to discuss that as the first item on the agenda. And I will hand it initially to the chief because we do have a staff report associated with that.
Let me skip ahead to my staff report. Talk about it. I don't need the staff report. So this item is on the agenda as a result of board direction. I went back and reviewed the board's direction a couple of times on the video just to make sure we hit the mark. What you have in front of you is a staff report that discusses what our current process is for you reviewing development projects within the district, what fire prevention does as far as following the fire code, and then some additional provisions for some non-required asks that we sometimes make. Yeah, I know that a lot of the conversation had come up primarily as a result of the project, or the Sheridan project and egress. That said, what I've done in this report is presented the board with some options for discussion and conversation. And I think probably the best thing to do is turn it back over to the board And it was Director Swan is requesting he has a presentation also, and see if there's any questions for staff, either myself or Chief Johnson. So that, back over to you, Director.
Okay. Why don't we, since Director Salon is the one that added it, why don't we have you make your commentary on it? Then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll have the board discussion. We're all good with that? Sure, thank you. Thank you. Fellow board members, public. Michelle, do you have the PowerPoint?
Yeah, let me.
Basically, all the board members have what the PowerPoint is. Basically, we as a fire board are held to a higher standard. I know individually we have Atherton, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and the unincorporated areas that we serve. But us as a fire board need to take into consideration all the total community involving traffic, response times, and the lives of our firefighter workforce. Safety for all is paramount. Please consider, importantly, that the developer stated at the Menlo Park Council meeting in November, they had no problem in adding a second ingress egress since a small one was already in their plans. A roadway Sheridan Drive never was built to accommodate over a minimum of 160 plus vehicles a day. With over 50 emails that were sent to our fire district, with a petition with over 300 signatures, that went to the city council in Menlo Park. With an added burden placed on Menlo Park by Atherton, placing a high-density project within a few blocks from this Sheridan Drive project, without taking into consideration the added traffic on our major response routes for our emergency services, Bay Road and Ringwood. A second ingress egress on Van Buren makes so much sense. A common sense approach. This will split the traffic flow in that particular area. Again, we have the total responsibility for the entire area. We are the fire district. Myself, the 50 emails, the petition signed by over 300 residents want a second ingress egress at that Sheridan Drive project. Without a second ingress egress is a complete, I feel, disregard for safety of others, pure negligence on the part of these local agencies, and finally, a cheap way to build a facility. Please, I request that the board here pass the resolution that was prepared tonight. Thank you, Mr. President and board members and audience. Okay, so we will go to public comment and then we'll have our board discussion on the topic. And our public comment is coming from, I'm not going to get your name, Rhodey? Michelle Rhodey. Okay, from Michelle. Normally it's 3 minutes. Skip's giving you his time as well, as I understand it. So you have a total of 6 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll be.
You've been
fast.
gifted 3 extra minutes
Okay, well.
if you need it.
You guys have already heard from me.
We did.
That's what pass this down. I'm sorry, you won't be able to see the map very well, but I'll do my best. So I'm Michelle Rhodey. I'm a 6th generation Californian, grew up in Fremont, lived here for 27 years now, a single parent, 2 kids, and a dog and a flock of chickens. So tiny, just 3 hens, very quiet ones. So I love Suburban Park and I've been a resident there for most of my time in Menlo Park, over 25 years. But I live right on Greenwood Drive, so I'm like 5 houses from Bay Road. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved there because I consider Suburban Park somewhat of a fire hazard because of the number of houses that we have there that are different from the rest of Bay Road. And we only have 2 ways out, and I live 5 houses from one of them, so it's a straight shot for me. When I retire, I'll be going back to my family's properties in Fremont. I don't plan to retire here. But I care a lot about teachers and people who will live and that's Sheridan Court. There's just a single narrow road there, and, with the two entrances that are far from that particular site of the pending 88 units, they're going to be trapped if we don't have another way out. So the challenge that we have is of ownership in that area. We've got the city, we've got the school district, and we have Caltrans. And those agencies, maybe the school district and Menlo Park may not have such a challenge, but talking with the state agency is always a challenge. I work and spend a lot of my time in regulatory and quality in my working profession for almost 30 years. So I work as a liaison to the FDA and ministries around the world in health and safety. I'm a longtime CERT volunteer. I've gone through refresher training, and I've lived in the room next door for a good 15 to 20 hours and taking part in many of the fire district training, which I'm really, really grateful for. But if you look around along Bay Road at the number of egress for each of these tiny little subdivisions along that road, Suburban Park is the largest one, and we're going to be increasing it by 37%. That's almost 3 times 88. That's at least another 300 people living in that tiny little sack, and it only has one way in and out. And they have to wind around quite a lot to get to that first entrance. And the second entrance, they really have to drive far to be able to exit. So I really believe that Van Buren exit is quite critical. So we're not equal to the other neighborhoods. My call to action for you is to follow through with the recommendation to the city. I think you have a duty, just as I have a duty, to put safe and effective products on the market. When people and processes and regulations don't work, it's my job to stop the product from going on the market. Speaking to CEOs and overriding them if necessary. And I think as a board, you also have the moral and public duty to protect the residents and future residents of our city. I won't be there, I think, to see them, but we have that there. Now, I do know, how's my time?
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes, okay. So I'm gonna make
Michelle's the
another
timekeeper.
pitch.
2 minutes, 6 seconds.
Okay, oh, just 1 minute pitch. I do know that other residents nearby in the Flood Triangle area have concerns because there's a very sheltered little haven house that protects vulnerable families that are homeless. And we care a lot about those families and those children in that community. But the egress that's being proposed can easily, would go around, wouldn't go through Haven House. And a very fencing can be made that would protect any of those children and families and protect their privacy, protect their, and still allow for safe entrance and exit for these new 88 residents and apartments and townhomes that will go there. So I think there's a win-win for everyone, but the state and the city and the fire board need to be able to talk to each other and find a safe and livable solution. And I think that's all of our duty. And I think it's not always, each individual entity has its own blinders and things they need to do to make things quick and efficient, fiscally responsible. But we also have a duty to safety and preservation. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments on this particular topic? So everyone submitted? Okay, so we can go ahead and go into the board discussion. I'm just gonna start down at the left here. John, we'll come on down the road.
Well, this is something that I think we should support the idea of a second way in and out for a number of reasons. One is the fact that the minimum requirement is one entrance or ingress, egress. Doesn't mean that we have to support the minimum. And I think it makes sense for the fire district to actually support safety. And so that's one reason. I think one of the things that the chief has recommended is this idea of treating everybody equally. But I don't think we can treat everybody equally because not every project is equal. And I'm saying this with a thought toward that monstrosity they're talking about on Willow Road and the old Sunset property and so forth. I mean, whatever that is, 7 or 10 stories or whatever, it's not the same as this one. It's got different problems, different concerns in terms of fire. And so I think the one constant should be the idea of safety. And not that everybody has to follow the exact same pattern because the patterns aren't the same. The third point though is the one that I asked the very first time this came up. I asked if supporting this second entrance would in any way reduce the number of units that could be put on the property, and I was told no. And the cost of the thing seemed trivial. In other words, the amount of legal fees that have probably already been spent on it, I think exceed the cost of implementing it in the first place. There doesn't seem to be one good reason not to do it, and it makes it safer. So I think as a board, we should be supporting safety, and I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so, thank you so much for doing the presentation, and thanks to all the residents who put a lot of time into this. I kind of agree with Chuck to a certain extent. I think safety is really important. I think the bigger issue for me, Mark, is the kind of collaborative work relationship that we need to have with the city of Menlo Park and even the county, like even in the West Menlo area where the housing element there for the county hasn't been approved. There's all this building, right? And it's fine. I mean, it's not like I'm against housing, but I think that when we are not in the conversation with the city or the county as they define the kind of development that they want, and that will also include the parking lots on Oak Grove. I mean, we need to be involved with that, especially if these projects make the city denser, right? And how does that impact the fire district? So I think that egress and ingress is really important because where I live, there's like a one-way street in the back of my house, and literally the only way that not the back of my house, the street that's at the end of my street. And then there's Alameda de Los Pulgas, and there's literally like two ways out, Alameda and Altschul. So even if you can't get out of Alameda and you're or onto Alameda because you're trapped, then you really can't even barely get out of Altschul if it's congested. So I don't know, how we want to have this conversation. I think it's a bigger problem in terms of the working relationship that we need to have with the city. Because that whole thing with 80 Willow Road, is that the project for the Sunset building? I mean, it's not fair to us if the fire district, us, then the community, us, because the community is in the fire district. If we're asked to come in at the very last minute to give input and then it's too late, right? I've been hearing from a lot of residents, both in the city, like this is West Menlo, Sharon Heights, and also this unincorporated area of West Menlo, about their concerns for just the density that's gonna happen in downtown. So how do we do that? We need to have a better liaison relationship with the city. I think that we have a decent relationship, but that has to be a priority, I think, for this board, because the city is going to move forward with their housing issues, right? So that's a big macro picture look at what I think is a problem, or we need to fix it. I don't think I can support this resolution, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be another resolution, right? Because as I read this yesterday, it says the wind at the Sheridan Apartments predominantly blows from the northwest towards Van Buren Road. Well, I mean, we're signing this as an elected body if we go with this, and I have no proof that this is the case because staff hasn't done any work on that. So those are the things that I am having a heartache over, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a conversation about ingress and egress and how we can make it safer for the residents there. But there's a bigger issue here, which I think is the relationship, and not just Menlo, but with all the other cities, East Palo Alto and Atherton, right, in the county. So I think that's a bigger conversation, and if we wanna put this on a future agenda, to even have the discussion, I mean, that's something that we can do. But I can't support this particular resolution just because there are so many factual things that I don't have substantial evidence of or for. Does that make sense?
Three items that I wanna kind of get a little more clarity on. I'm with Virginia, I can't support the resolution as we currently stand, because I still have clarity of understanding, within the project. I'm aware that staff has done their due diligence in terms of following current, California Fire Code. And in the report, it indicated that, the project has gotten reviewed, and it does, is complied with the current fire code, California Fire Code. That's clear. The second item, points to, in the report that this was not a code requirement, the second, exit out of the complex. So when it says it's not a code requirement, then it has to really be an onus upon the developer, as well as getting clearance from the city to go against or approve that particular second exit out of the project. The third bullet point talks about the developer did submit plans with a secondary fire department access point through a lot gate accessible by any responding fire unit. So the gate is locked and it only gets open when there is emergency. And the challenge that I'm having right now is that on one side, there's trying to be code conformant and follow those rules. And on the other side, it doesn't really seem to affect emergency by having the gate locked until there's an emergency. Then the gate has to come unlocked. So the question then becomes, if the gate is permanently open, it seems like it's out of our hands as a fire board. It really lies with the city and how their codes, their ordinance are set up to give grace to that particular project. And there has to be a valid reason for, I know, cities to give them grace to overlook whatever is on the books currently. So I think that for our hands as a fire district, it seems like it's really tied, we're shackled to where our responsibility is as a fire and protection agency, here in San Diego County. So those, I really need to get further, maybe I'm totally off on my understanding of what's here, but it seems like if the developer has submitted a plan for this, my question is where that lies. I mean, is the developer going for the city council and requesting this wholehearted? I don't know, but I think that's something that if the developer is willing to do it, and if it doesn't fit the city code code or compliance, then that's where it needs to be hammered out. Because it seems like our hands are tied.
And Cheryl, just shed a little light on it. So, you're right, what the fire district is able to mandate has already been mandated, and the developers comply. We also asked the developer to voluntarily provide a little bit more, which they have also. I do not have a particular issue if the developer makes a decision to permanently open those gates. That certainly is fine by us. Whatever the board decides tonight, it could, it sounds like there may be a majority of the board that's gonna direct staff to come back with a modified resolution. We can do that, and we'll have some questions for you if we go down, if that's where the direction is as to what you would like in it. But just for the board to understand, and for our public members that are here tonight, is that it's just gonna be a recommendation by the board. It won't mandate anything, but it would be a resolution of support for what your efforts are. And so we'll figure out a way, if the board directs us to do that, to figure out a way to do it and word it so it doesn't create internal conflict for us in the way the fire code works, and also supports what the board's trying to accomplish. So hopefully, Director, that gave you some ideas.
I think.
Okay, let me step in and give my point of view if I may. So I hope everybody understands on the board and the community members as well, the immense pressure the cities are under around housing elements. Because I don't think we can take that completely lightly. I've watched certainly the Atherton Town Council, I attend a lot of their meetings, who pushed back as far as they could push. It kind of, to some extent, and I don't want to represent their point of view on it, it looked like a losing battle. They ultimately went ahead and approved projects. I think many of the cities have gone down the same road. The alternative in general is for the cities is far worse, which is the builder's remedy, where the state just starts approving projects for the cities. So I think it's really important that we just recognize the starting point of, I don't think this was a matter of city councils in any of the cities running around going, we'd love to build high density housing in the community, in the middle of our community. There's no intentionality. They're being asked to do that by state law. They're being pressured on it. You've all seen it in the press, I'm sure, in the local press. Everybody's having trouble with it. Portola Valley, Woodside, Atherton. There's not a community that's really, kind of come up with the magic solution of it. And there's a number of communities that have really gone to the extreme to try to fight it, not necessarily in our area, and the results haven't been very good. So I want to just make sure that everybody understands the context of it. The second thing is where I struggle on this particular project a little bit is that it went through the process. It went through the city. It came as it should to the fire marshal's office for plan review. We do, within the fire district, we do a plan review for code compliance on fire codes. And in a way, from my lens, the system kind of worked because our staff requested additional accommodation on this project to enhance safety, which was put in a second exit and put in a gate for additional fire crews to be able to come in. And interestingly, in this project, the developer has agreed to that. The plans that have been submitted by the developer include the second exit. So that is part of our approved plans of the project. So the second exit is there. And where I struggle a little bit is now that they've kind of met what we asked them to do, to then come back with a resolution kind of saying, well, we want more, the more from my lens, and I appreciate what everyone's facing, has a lot more to do with traffic and inconvenience than it does fire safety. Because there's going to be a gate open. And if that gate, once it's open, if that gate needs to be an evacuation path, I have no doubt in my mind that Menlo Park Police handling an evacuation path are going to direct traffic out that gate if they need to. And the gate, the idea that it's locked and it gets opened, our response time, the first engine in can open the gate. This isn't, they're not digging through keychains typically. They have a master key, it opens these gates. They do it frequently in businesses and properties and buildings. They have Knox keys, they They have a master key, they can open up buildings, they can open up schools, they can open up gates. So this is a gate that's going to get, upon any real activation of a fire response, the gate's going to get open as needed. And then once it's open, we have now satisfied really the additional safety measure of fire safety and fire access. And the fire being able to get out of the project without having to funnel all the cars through the community if need be. So this building will actually have multiple exit routes based on what's already been approved. And so and then the last part of my comments would just be on, kind of what's the best process for the district.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that us using kind of the voluntary enhancement approach, which is what we did here of asking and requesting for enhancements, I generally believe that is the better approach to get accommodations on these projects. The developers, very few developers want to build a project that's unsafe. I know there may be some disagreement on that amongst board members who think this capitalist society of developers, they don't care, they'll entrap people in buildings. I don't really think that's the case. And we've had a history in the district of doing voluntary compliance and voluntary changes. The cities do the same thing in the planning commission and the planning review process. It's a back and forth with the developers, the homeowners, whoever is building. And my fear is that if we get into the business of the fire district of now sending the cities formal resolutions from the district, that if I'm on the receiving end of that, what I would do personally is I'd look and say, okay, well, what does the code say? That'd be my response to it. If I'm given a resolution, if I'm approached professionally by the professionals that are overseeing fire safety, who have suggestions for me to make my project safer, I'm going to be much more attentive to those than I am the resolution. But I really do fear that the response of us sending formal resolutions around and making that a practice, the response will be, what does the code say? And at that point, the only alternative we would then have as a fire district would be to pass ordinances or to enhance the fire code locally, which is a whole involved process that we can consider. But I actually think if we want to dramatically improve fire safety, then we should research, are there enhancements in our community we want to require and make them ordinances and make them rules and make them apply to everybody. But this idea of just doing random resolutions on piecemeal projects, and I think for me personally, this would be a very bad one to start with, given the developer has already accommodated the request for the second exit. And I do understand there's traffic concerns and other concerns. Those are all kind of intermixed in all the communications. When I look at the emails, I look at the presentations of city councils, I look at the petitions, it's intermixed. The fire safety is in there. I'm not saying it's not there, but it's intermixed with all the traffic concerns and the number of new residents in the community and all the things that have been raised, but it's not the sole issue. And fire safety just happens to be the one thing that already got accommodated. And so that's kind of my point of view on why I think it's, we're better off with the informal approach and accepting what we've been given on this particular project.
I like to,
Okay.
I like to, to sum up, and then of course, I'm sure we're gonna go around again, right? First, as the chief said, it's only a recommendation. Okay, second is, why should we do the minimum? I mean, let's make it really safe and put the second egress in there. Next, with the staff report, we have two areas that follows 2 out of the 4 recommendations. One is the additional ingress egress points, and the number 3 is request that access roadway be made wider than the fire code requires. Well, Gary, when you're talking about that second compromise emergency exit, that could be widened, and that would fall into what the staff report has reported here. And then 4, most importantly, which is what I said at that November meeting, the developer had no problem putting another ingress egress there. And, this resolution that was prepared, and I just, want to ask the chief, is any of this false, chief? Is there any misrepresentation when the residents wrote this up? Is there any false information here on this?
I'm not sure whether they're saying false, but it's,
Well, is it, I'm just saying, is it false information? Because I've prepared pretty much a generic one, not as specific as the one that was given to our residents, but I prepared one that's pretty, I could say, open-ended relative to that project. That it's a recommendation, is what the chief has said, a recommendation, not a requirement. And, as I said before, I think we have a responsibility to all the cities that we represent. So I have one, if I could read it, where I have a compromise. And it says, construction of a second ingress egress to the Ravenswood School District Sheridan Drive project. The Ravenswood School District would like to build an 88 apartment building on Sheridan Drive on a 2.2 acre parcel in Menlo Park, California. According to current legislation, a structure can be built with one ingress egress if the structure is under 200 units. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We, as a fire district, duty is to protect life, property, and identify issues that affect public safety. On November 19, 2024, at the Menlo Park Council meeting, the developer stated they could add a second ingress egress. We, the majority of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors, has determined that the construction of the structure of 88 units, one ingress, one egress, is not as safe as a second ingress egress should be added to the proposed development. The minimum requirement by current guidelines is not acceptable to our board. The second ingress egress could be easily added since a proposed, which is what you talked about, Gary, the emergency fire exit is already presented in their plan. And the developer has stated in a Menlo Park Council meeting that they had no objection to build a second ingress egress. There are many reasons for the safety, protection, and security of the surrounding neighborhoods to include future residents. This includes the safety of our firefighters that will be battling a fire if it occurred at that site. 2 ingress egresses would be better than 1. With 2 ingress egresses, entry and exit would be safer, and emergency services would be best served to our community in the protection of life and property. And I have passed this day and all the other stuff that goes down. So I think something open-ended like this, maybe not specifically, which is what the residents wanted, but something that would send a message to Menlo Park and maybe assist Atherton with their high-density project that is pretty much in the same particular area. So I think this might be a good compromise resolution. So that's my submission. Thank you.
I wanted to challenge, Chief, your statement that we cannot require more. And let me just ask for a minute. And this is a true question. But my experience comes from building 3 childcare centers in Palo Alto. Palo Alto has a little bit different process in Menlo Park. It gets all of the people involved, planning convenes everybody who, public works, public safety, fire, everybody comes into one room and they consider this all together. And then the planning commission enforces it. And there were things, we knew what the fire code was, but we were told we needed to do certain things that went beyond the fire code. And when planning talked to us, there was never a question of, oh, it was voluntary, or if we were nice people, we would do it or something like that. They made it very clear that we had to do it. Now, are you saying to me that they're not allowed to do that, it's safe. If the fire district thought this project was unsafe, I was under the impression that we could mandate almost anything in the name of safety. But I'll say one more thing that actually gives some teeth to this, and that is no developer is gonna build a project where the fire department or whatever claims it's unsafe, because they're not gonna get insurance for it. And if they can't get insurance, they're not gonna build it. And no insurer in right mind is going to insure a project where people could sue and say they didn't build it to a safe level and so forth. I just feel like what you're saying isn't consistent with what our power is, that we do have the power to mandate it. And I hate to say this, but contrary to what Gary says, I, as a developer in this case, might not have done some of the things that we were asked to do to be nice. It was the hammer that made us do it. So tell me, when you say this, is that the law in California? They are not allowed to ask?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my thoughts on this and then let John also weigh in, because he's really the one that applies the fire code. And I wasn't there when you went through the process in Palo Alto, and sometimes, you know, especially when you have the planning folks involved, there's oftentimes asks that are additional, that are outside of the scope of the fire code, so that's possible. In my experience, both here and down south, is the application of the fire code was pretty strictly followed, and there weren't requirements in this. There was always something that we could point to in the fire code that required something, and that was just my position as the fire chief down south, is that we apply what's black and white to the fire code, so.
And there's no trump card that says, or any other safety issue.
John may have one, so before I misstep or misspeak, I'll let John.
So the
weigh in.
chief spoke exactly where we're at. We apply the same to everybody. The time that there's a variance is whenever a project, a developer says we want to do something and it is outside of the building code and fire code, then that allows us to then work outside of the code to do mitigating measures and stuff that would meet or exceed what the intent of the building and fire code is. But if they are showing that they are meeting the current codes and local ordinances, then we have to approve it.
Can I just make sure I'm understanding what you're saying? You're saying if they're asking for some exception, then your response could be an exception also?
Yes, we would then enter discussions to see how could we possibly make this happen, or a lot of times we say no. Like I just had a meeting with a developer on Monday for a big project over in East Palo Alto, and they're proposing a handful of things, and I told them no. This project here, we saw it, we saw an opportunity to be able to improve things for the fire district, and they did it, and so we have a second means of access egress. Just so you know, with this project, we have an ordinance in place in Menlo Park that is applying to this project, where we have a stronger sprinkler density requirement and a stronger water requirement than what's in the code for this project. So we already have 2 ordinance applications that are stronger for this building. And another thing that I'm doing with this project, there are legal things that the developer can do through the code that can grant them exceptions that I may not have teeth on unless if it's a life safety deal. And right now, I've been working with the city on one of those deals because it's costing them over $1 million, and it's a big item. And I'm holding a no to that on this project because I see it as a essential firefighting safety issue that to me is more important than this road. And the developer is not happy with it because they want to grant a state exception, but that is my job, is to look at the entire picture with this project. So there are times that we can do that.
But again, they have to show that they're outside those bounds, and that's why we have those discussions. But we are involved with all these projects very early on and meet with developers with these projects to make sure that they're gonna work well on paper before they ever come out of the ground.
And just for clarification on the ordinances you mentioned, these are ordinances that were passed by the fire district sometime in the past.
Yeah,
That
we
you're
got, 2.5 years ago, we're actually coming up next year. We will be in our next code cycle, and so we will be presenting you with ordinances and stuff again. And so if there are items that we wanna look into, we can look into putting those into place with this next code adoption cycle next year.
Chair, John, did you say that the city of Menlo Park has a code on their books that strengthens the?
Yeah, so the fire district enforces the California Fire Code, and then small pieces of the other family of codes. But the city of Menlo Park enforces all of the family of codes. That's building code, electrical code, plumbing code, mechanical code, and pieces of the fire code. So they enforce a whole lot bigger picture, and then of course they have all of their local general plan that says, here's all of our planning rules. They have a lot of stuff that they're going through that process, and in those processes, so going from planning all the way through the process, the fire district is a sign-off agency on all these projects, all the way through it. I meet with these projects, like this one here, I met with them 2 years ago before to get where we're at.
I know for X amount of property developer myself, and all the properties in East Fall also, that the residents have power beyond their expectation, beyond their knowledge. And it may seem like a trivial thing to go and force to sit down at the city manager's office or sit down at a council meeting full of people that are asking for some consideration. But it's hard to go and ask for something when it's already been given and provided for. And the question is, why are you asking for something that's already been given? Developer asked for it, they're willing to make that concession. You know, it's one of the things where the target of the idea really needs to be focused on the city council, because they can grant those waivers. We can, you know, we can all send a letter in as a protest, but it's the city council members that can change those things if they want to. So I think that for me, you know, again, I think it's one of those things where, you know, if it's already been granted that the developers are willing to do it, I'm not sure what the issue is. Maybe I'm missing this. Please help me. If somebody know what it is, let me know, because I do get late at night and I do get foggy in the head, so.
I don't know if the public's allowed to speak, but.
Go.
Oh.
If you have a brief comment.
Thank you, no, thank you. I want to address you, Jerry, and you, Robert, because I think I have heard residents long ago talk about the traffic, right? But that went away long ago, and all the neighbors I know are in support of building on that site. So, but I am concerned about, I wasn't sure that second egress had been approved, because my understanding is that Caltrans in the city and the school district are not talking, and that isn't going there. So I challenge the board that there are communication problems between these different agencies and entities, and that you have a responsibility and a duty to address that. Secondly, I think a locked gate, I appreciate the fire department would come with a locked gate, but that means residents, all that time lost while a fire is burning, residents cannot get out in that trapped little area. And I think that's wrong. If people don't regularly use a spot, just like on an airplane, people don't look at the exit that's closest behind them. They all head to the front. They just don't lose logic when they panic. Third, I've been a regulator, worked with regulators most of my life. If there isn't a regulation on the book that requires hires a company to hold safety and health paramount in general. And I love the CEOs I work for, and it was great companies, many. But in general, companies won't do it because they're looking to save time or cost. So please don't keep that gate locked, because it's only gonna help the fire department and they get there when they get there.
Part of my understanding, that I have, 360 some units over in East Boston. Part of what I'm hearing is more of a procedural, managerial problem on site. If there's a manager on that site, the manager lives there, breathes on that site. And when something happened and if they need to get out the door, that manager has access to that block box, or that knock box, to open it up. So if the manager is not there, they don't have an on-site manager, then I would address the on-site manager issue with the developer and with the city. Because I hear you, if nobody's around, nobody will know where the key is. So are we looking over this pile of stuff trying to find the key? We don't know where it is. Yeah, it lies are in danger, but part of the managerial process that any development that have X amount of people that live in a complex, there should be an on-site manager. And that's the responsibility of it. They'll get there before the fire trucks will get there. So what I'm saying is that I think that's an easier fix if there's not that type of individual on the site. And that if the developer said we're not gonna have it, then that will be one of the demands to add added pressure on the city council. Because it can become a fire safety issue, for sure. I've seen that happen. And it can become a problem, but you can mitigate that by, as residents in the community, but targeting the efforts that where it can make the situation more safe without having the communication issues still fragmented between these parties you're talking about. That's a third alternative besides having the developer willing to do it, having on-site management ready there to unlock that gate. They'll get there before the fire department will. So.
Okay, I want to pause this particular angle, and I want to go back to something that Chief Johnson said, which is, it sounds like we're coming up to the cycle where additional ordinances would be presented by staff to the board.
Or
Or policies, ordinances, regulations, whatever the local ordinances, though, those are things that can be mandated. And my kind of take on it in this particular case, we've already gotten voluntary compliance to what we asked for. And so, the voluntary compliance was put a second exit in and fire access point for the fire department. It can be open. That was granted, delivered. My understanding from talking to Chief Johnson is that that is part of the approved plans, includes that. It's actually shown, I believe, on the drawings here as well. And I think the place for the board to get involved is not in kind of opinion-driven resolutions that don't have any teeth. The place for the board to get involved is put our effort into the set of ordinances that regulates these kind of projects in advance and sets the rules and regulations. And to the point of the public comment, that's ultimately what people have to follow, because then it's not a discretionary thing. It's by ordinance. And so if the board really wants to flex its muscle on this project, not necessarily on this project, but on projects more generally, in future projects, ordinances are the way to go. And I think we should consider staff's request there, and I personally don't think we should, pursue with a resolution, especially on a project, as Robert very elegantly stated, something that's already been granted.
Can I ask one question? I know I see my time,
I'd like to.
but I think, I don't know why, I keep having this question in my mind. Why is there a gate? And also related to that, when you asked for the fire access, why did you ask for fire access with a gate? Or why, if you didn't ask for a gate, why was a gate required?
Do you have?
Yes, because I only have authority on private property. And so that is private property. They had to get an agreement with the property, which is off Van Buren, to be able to put that there.
And after that agreement signed, by the way, yeah.
So, well, and that's what they're working on, so that's what.
So it's a property, it's a private property
So
issue.
it's a private property issue, and that's the agreement that they're working on to have that. And so the gate is there because it's to protect that fire department emergency vehicle access, of which we only have authority on private property, not on public property.
Okay, I want to be mindful of time. Go ahead with your quick question, then I'm gonna make a recommendation for the board.
So Mark, in your report on page 2 of 156, you have
Sure.
4 bullet points. It says, if the board decides to support or propose additional recommendations that are related to fire department, fire district operations, they might include but not be limited to certain items such as, and one of them is support the elimination of traffic calming measures that negatively impact response times. Of course, you would expect me to go on to that, right? So is that, like, these are the kinds of things that we have to work with the city. So I'm willing to look at, when we review the code, I think we have to put in some policy issues too, or policy concerns or considerations. So, but and one of these is the traffic calming, right? And because in some ways, it's like you can't have traffic calming and expect people to, the firefighters, to get there on, fast and have all these other things that residents might want without addressing these traffic calming devices that actually hamper response times as well. So I mean, I wanna just make sure that that kind of thing is put in the discussion items when we talk about the code, John. when we
So I-
review the code.
I had said,
I'd like to make a motion.
yeah,
Well,
hold
I
on,
want
just
that.
one.
I'm going to make a motion.
Yeah, I mean, so I just, I agree with y'all, I agree with you, I am concerned though, the residents are concerned, I am very concerned about that. Because I don't live in your neighborhood, so I don't know.
Please come visit.
Well, I would like to, but anyway, I don't know if the resolution is the way to go right now.
Okay,
That's my, it just, and it's specifically this one, just because I mentioned, I don't have the
No,
evidence
just one
about the
second.
wind for it, that's your first.
Oh, yeah.
Bullet.
okay, so,
But I wanted
So,
to mention
yeah,
traffic calming,
thanks. So-
put it in that discussion.
I think, I mean, I could go through that list of
Yeah.
4 items there and have a comment on every one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll pause my own thoughts on that as well. Because I think to some extent, we might have a little bit of a circular discussion
Yeah.
going at this point in time as an observation. So what I was going to make a recommendation, and Director Solano was jumping to that conclusion, is if there is a motion to be considered, let's put a motion on the table. Let's see if it gets a second. Let's see where the vote goes. And if there's no second, or the vote is not positive for that particular motion, then we can table this item and we can bring it back in the future, whether it's an addition, back on the agenda again for further discussion, or at the time that we actually consider ordinance changes, which would be kind of my recommendation, but I'll pause there and see if there's a motion to be made. And I'd ask the motion to be very clear about what's being asked for.
Okay, thank you, Gary. All right. The second resolution that I read, Michelle,
Yes.
should I just give you a copy of it?
Well, I mean, I haven't even seen it, so I don't even know,
I
I've
just
heard
read
it,
it.
I know, but it's different when you read it versus when you hear it, so I like to
Do you want me
see
to read
it.
it again?
No, I'd
I'd
like
be
to
more than
actually have
happy
a
to.
copy, I'd like to have a copy of it to
Could
review
you
it.
make a copy of this for Virginia?
Just let her read it now.
I'm not gonna,
Or you wanna look at it?
So is your motion, Rob?
That's my motion.
Your motion is to approve your alternative
Yes.
resolution.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the motion that's on the table. Is there a second of that motion?
Well, we didn't have it.
Not, I'm not asking if she's read it. I'm asking, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay,
no, I mean, I wish we'd gotten a copy of this earlier.
so just quick discussion on the motion that's on the table. The thing I would say is, I don't think it's good practice to review a motion that was, to review a resolution that was read out loud not handed out to members in advance to consider. I think if the appropriate action, and we can vote on this resolution, we will vote on it because there's a motion and a second, so we will have a vote. I personally think the right thing, if we want to even consider a motion or consider a resolution, sorry, is to instruct staff to come back with an appropriate resolution
I
and
think
a
based,
recommendation from staff as to the content of a resolution.
based on research.
I don't believe the board should be in the business of creating the resolutions.
Well, I mean, we do
It's a staff
create
function.
them, but
You got a motion in a second.
We have a motion, so that's my comment on the motion. So any other discussion about the motion? Okay.
is there
all-
public comment you wanna?
No, we don't need, we've had public comment. Okay. Okay, there's no further discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Signify by saying aye. Opposed to the motion by nay? So nay. So that motion failed, 3-2. And then,
Excuse me, Director Blum, I think for the record, you should record each person's vote since it was not.
Thank you.
unanimous.
Okay, so I'll give you do a roll call, Michelle, if you would. I'll let you do the roll call.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
No,
Director Crawley?
No,
Director Solano?
Aye,
Director Bloom?
No.
thank you. Okay, thank you, Stephen.
so can I ask another question, Gary?
Sure, and then.
Cause I
believe that
I
closes.
don't, yeah, I don't wanna drop the topic. And maybe this is for a later, the latter part of the agenda to put, a future agenda. I know it's on here again, but, I mean, it's on, I wanna kind of continue this discussion because I think this is something that we should brought because I think it's gonna have impacts for all of the other projects that are coming to Menlo Park. So, John, when is the review for the ordinance supposed to happen again? Like, you said in about 1.5 years. Can we move that date up?
So the brand new International Fire Code comes out in January. The California Fire Code will be coming out July 1, so which we have 6 months to review and look into adopting. So starting July 1, we will be doing that process locally and have through December to do that.
I just don't wanna drop this, cause I really do care about what happens in that neighborhood. And I just feel like we're being left out of the conversation. Like I've said this multiple times, and I brought up the traffic calming devices because we've had a history with the city and the county of putting traffic calming devices without even having a discussion with the fire district on how that impacts our response times and our vehicles, quite frankly.
But
So
it goes much further than that, because it's not just traffic calming. So
Yeah.
Where do you,
Well, I'm just
where
giving
do you
that as
paint,
one
where do you
example.
paint the red lines? How wide do
Right.
you make the lanes?
Well, I'm just
You-
using that as an
yeah.
example. 'Cause
So
it's
it's
just-
the overall traffic patterns and everything else that are being controlled. I mean, we know from the Oakland Hills fire that the predominant reason in the tragic Oakland Hills fire, when there's all the
Yeah.
fatalities, was because the fire trucks couldn't get up because of the parked cars. The resolution of that, by the way, is if you drive up any of those roads, is red zones almost all the way up the hill. And there's periodic little areas where the road was wide enough to allow a car or two. The residents hate it. Yeah, but that was the resolution to the fire safety issue. So I think, as far as this topic goes, I think that the decision the board has on it is there's one of two things. There's either another resolution or there's a general consensus of giving direction to staff as to what we'd like to do
To
next.
continue,
To
yeah,
continue the
yeah.
discussion.
I
But
would agree with the
Through the
latter.
chair. Before we vote on that motion, I would like
I
to.
didn't make a motion, so but go ahead.
Well, comments to the extent that
Yeah.
you did. I'd like to know from John, in relationship to this project, whatever those future codes might look like and what impact they may or may not have on this current project. If there's impact, it's gonna be new codes coming down the pipe that may have an impact on future projects like this. And yeah, I wanna continue this conversation, but if it's not, I'm not sure what else we can do with this project. Especially if the new regulations will not impact a project like this one?
So if you pass a new ordinance, it'll follow state law for a certain number of days before it can become applicable, and once it's applicable, it's only applicable to projects that are submitted from that date forward. We cannot go backwards.
Director Burns.
I just wanted to ask a quick question, John. John, when you said you gave a timetable for when the state fire code will come out in 6 months or whatever it is. But we could make an amendment at any time before that, right?
You can, but two things would have to occur. You'd have to go through the entire process of having public hearings, present it, and then wait the appropriate amount of time to have it be applicable. And then, since we're a fire district, we have to go to the cities and the towns to ratify it to actually, and to be applicable in their town or city. If they choose not to ratify it, then it's not applicable. If it's a building structure component.
But that's true even when if we waited the full time period, that's still true.
If it's a building structure item, if it's a non-structural building item, then we can apply it our own without city.
I'm just trying to make the point that the dates
Yes,
don't limit when we do something.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Director Slaney.
Yes, Michelle,
Yes.
as to my comment, after the motion was made and the vote, I'd like the record to reflect this, please. That what I proposed was only a recommendation. It was not a minimum, but it was more than one ingress egress. And as to the staff report, it follows two of the four recommendations. One, additional ingress egress points and request that access roads be made wider than fire code requirements. And four, the developer at a Menlo Park council meeting in November had no objections to making a second ingress egress. And that's all I have. Thank you. Be sure that's reflected in the report.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're done with this discussion. We can discuss when we get to future agenda items, whether we want to put some additional item on the agenda regarding this. So I'm going to close this discussion and we'll move on to item number 7, which is adopting the resolution amending the compensation plan for unrepresented management and confidential employees. And that, I believe, Chief, is yours.
Yeah, this is what I was ready for before we started on. First of all, thank you, members, that came here to comment, thank you for, yeah.
Thank you for your
Very
time.
nice, appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much,
Michelle.
everyone. Thank
Let me get to item 7. Item 7 and 8 are, really, page what, 8? Items 7 and 8 are really similar items that we've talked about in closed session already. These are both recommending that the board adopt resolutions increasing components in the compensation plan for unrepresented management confidential. Since we've discussed it already in closed session, I will leave it at that. I will also say, should the board approve 7 and or 8, we'll come back in January for an updated master pay schedule.
I move that we approve the resolution amending the comp plan for unrepresented management and confidential employees.
I'll second.
So I moved it, I second. Is there any further discussion on this one? Chuck?
I'm sorry, are we doing both right
Now
now?
we're just doing number 7.
Okay, I think this is not a problem, but it's not very clear here, and I just would like to speak for clarity. On page 92 of this, unless you look very, very carefully, it looked like we're increasing compensation by 43.5%.
The 3 is deleted.
Well, maybe it's
The red
just,
line had it.
The 4 is struck out.
I'm just saying that on my copy, it looks like 43.5.
Yeah,
with 483 and an underline is on the.
And that's all I'm saying is I'm just, I think it would be nice if we could somehow make sure that we emphasize that this is,
That was the unfortunate, the strikeout that looks like a hyphen right through the four,
Yeah.
aligned with the crossbar of the four, so.
And it's
Yeah,
year
40% should not be
20,245.
and that's what I'm saying. If this were duplicated in black and white, and the same thing is true, I'll just mention without having, bringing it up a second time, on page 112 of the next one, the same problem occurs.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with any of the numbers, I'm
It's
just
been noted.
saying.
We'll figure out a better way to display that next time.
Yeah.
Liquid paper.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on item 7? Okay, all those in favor of item 7, the resolution amending the comp plan for unrepresented management confidential employees, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passed unanimously. And item 8, I believe you're done with your discussion. So I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution amending the comp plan for unrepresented chief officers as well.
Second.
Robert has seconded. Any discussion on that one? Okay, all
Oh.
members,
We should do the liquid whiteout on.
Got
okay, all those in favor of adopting that resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and that passes unanimously.
Director Solano, you didn't speak at all.
Aye.
Thank you.
I agree. You heard me.
I will talk to you.
But Michelle needs to hear you.
No.
Okay, item number 9, adopt a resolution authorizing the fire chief to execute a contract with National Garage Door. This is the retrofit of the fire station 2 bifold doors for added safety, amount of $215,799, and this has been reviewed by the facilities committee.
I'll make a motion to approve and give an authorization for fire chief to execute a contract with National Garage Door Company for retrofitting the fire station 2 bifold apparatus doors in the amount of $215,799.
Do we have a second?
A second.
I have no question. And the questions? Yeah, just go for it, Michelle.
Why are we doing this now?
This is, it's a great question. Yeah.
Station 2.
We have some safety issues related to the way the bifold doors move inwards. So causing people to get stuck, potential for compression between the engine
Oh,
and the stuff.
That's all I need to know, thank you. That's
Yeah,
all.
there's a design flaw in the station we're trying to fix.
Thanks.
That's what.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, it's not a question, but it's sort of a snarky comment that we're spending $250,000. And the length of the tiller trucks did not increase at this time. These are the same size they were before. This was just us not doing, us or the architect not doing a very good job. And it's one of the reasons I don't want to rush the work on Station 1. Because we end up coming back and we've already on this station had to fix the sidewalk or the driveway out in front of the station because the angle of it was wrong and so forth. I mean, these are just things that shouldn't occur and people should know better.
Any other comments?
One more, just to finish that, I don't think we need to do this, but we could certainly make a claim against the architect.
It was not the architect's fault.
Because we specified how it should
It was
go.
direction from our staff. Staff that no longer works here. That's all, I will not name names, but that's, yes.
But without making a kind of an ad hominem attack here, is there anything we could do in the future so something like this is reviewed? What could we do?
Well, it would be best for us to have a conversation offline, related to that, but, really the best thing we can do is let the professionals, AKA John Hitchcock and the architects, do their jobs.
I see.
Both of whom are incredibly competent. And as you've seen with Station 4, no issues.
And there was no intervention on the part of other people in that case? Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on that item? Okay, all in favor of adopting the resolution as moved? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that unanimous approval on that as well. Thank you for attending, Lynn.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again for your service. All right, we did item 10, won't do that again. Item 11, approve the commendation to honor San Mateo County Board of Supervisor Warren Slocum. Michelle, I'm not clear whether we're approving the actual writing of it.
I put one together, submitted it, and
So
if
you
the
want-
board chooses to,
So you want the board to approve the version you created?
if the board wants to
Or modify.
provide
Okay.
Mr. Warren Slocum with a
Do,
commendation, this is the one I made up, and
okay,
think it looks fun.
so do we need a motion then?
it could
To
be
approve
upon consensus,
Okay.
whichever you prefer.
Has everybody had a chance to review it, and do we have consensus that this is the quality resolution? I believe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck, you're the only one I haven't
Oh, that's.
seen it.
It's fine.
Keep it with Michelle's, make sure everybody, okay, so we have consensus on that, that will be the resolution, and we'll.
So I just. I hate to pick nits, but if it's a resolution, you should.
It's a commendation, it's a commendation, it's not a resolution.
Okay, I stand corrected. If
Okay.
I want to vote on it, you certainly don't have to.
Thank you. Okay. We are on to number 12, nomination election of board president, vice president for calendar year 2025. I want to remind the board of the process here on a couple items on this. One is that we did make a change in the board's policy when we last approved it, that on my gavel of closing this meeting, whoever is then the duly elected president and vice president of the board becomes the duly elected president and vice president of the board upon the closure of this particular meeting at the end of this. So we kind of eliminated that weird oddity of you're kind of the elected president, but you're not the elected president yet. So we eliminated that through that process. And then the way this works is that we will take nominations for the board president and the vice president separately. When we'll vote on the president, and essentially the first person will go in the order that they are nominated, and the first person to receive a majority vote. We then end the voting at that point in time. And with all those rules in place, I would like to take the privilege of nominating my loyal vice president, Robert Jones, to be president for the year 2025. So that is one nomination that is on the table, and we are open to other nominations for board president.
I'd like to nominate Virginia Changarelli.
I'm gonna decline the nomination, thanks, Rob.
Okay. So you
I'm
decline.
declining, yeah.
Okay. Any other nominations, Chuck?
Yeah, in reading how we're doing this and so forth, I note, and we've done this in the past, that it makes provision for somebody serving 2 terms, and I think Gary has done a good job as president, and I would like to nominate Gary as president for a 2nd term.
I appreciate the positive comments, and I'm going to decline that nomination as well. There is a provision, you're correct, that there is a provision for a 2nd term. I also believe that a rotation in this kind of environment is a good thing, not a bad thing. And so I'm happy to kind of decline and step aside and give somebody else an opportunity to hopefully continue some of what I started and take the board in the direction they feel necessary representing the public. But thank you for the comments. Okay, do we have any other nominations? We're running out of people to nominate quickly here. Okay, with no other nominations, I guess we don't need a,
No, you should take.
No, we need
we'll
to
still
vote.
take a vote. Okay, and do we do a roll
Get a
call?
majority.
Do we- oh, that's
Another
true.
nomination.
Okay, do we do a roll call vote for that?
Same rules as everything, if it's unanimous, you don't need
Okay.
it, but if it's not unanimous, you do.
Okay, so all in favor of having Robert as president of the board for 2025, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain. I feel like, I agree with Gary's last comment about abstention. I'd like the minutes, not abstention, excuse me, about rotation. And I think we had violated that in the past, and I don't really want to be part of the process that's going on about all that.
Okay, so let's do a roll call on it then.
Director Bernstein,
I'm abstaining.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
I,
Director Solana.
Present,
Is that an aye or a nay?
present,
I don't know what that means.
you can be present, can't you?
You will count it as an abstention unless you say otherwise.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll vote aye for it, so that still passes on a 3-2
Do it
vote.
in Congress.
Okay, I will now open it up for the vice president nominations.
I want to nominate Virginia for vice president.
Other nominations for vice president? Okay, hearing no other nominations, we can vote on that one as well. All in favor of Virginia for vice president for 2025? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'll abstain.
I'm abstaining also for the
Okay.
same reason.
So would you do a roll call on it then, so we just have a good record of it?
Director Bernstein,
Abstention.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
I,
Director Solana,
Abstain.
Director Bloom.
Aye. Okay, congratulations, Robert, Virginia.
Thank you, Robert.
I think we'll have great leadership again next year, and I'm optimistic about what the board can continue to accomplish. So,
I want to thank you, Lori. You have done a yeoman's job this year. And I think we are for the better of it.
I will echo that, Gary. Thank you for your leadership and your contribution to the board and to the district. I think that your skills and expertise and knowledge has just really enhanced the district.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, proposed agenda items. It's still my meeting until they have.
Right.
You don't get to take over yet.
Can
Any
I just ask about that? I want to ask council here. In the old, I don't remember from the new board policies, but in the old board policy, there were really there was this practice of somebody taking over at the meeting, as Gary mentioned. But the actual policy said that the person would take over as of the new year, the new calendar year. And so I'm wondering, does he really end here, or does he end December 31?
So the old policy, you were correct, I'm telling you not my view, but what the board's decision was, created some overlap where the preparation for the January meeting was overlapped between the outgoing and the incoming president. And so what the board did this time is they said, the new president takes office upon gaveling out of this meeting, so that there is a new president who is solely on point for organizing and leading the preparation for the January meeting.
I'm not quarreling with it, but let's go further so we really know. Who then will sign all the minutes or all the resolutions that came from this meeting?
As soon as Gary gavels this meeting to a close, Robert is the board.
And
But
so
he
he,
still has to sign for the rest of the meeting.
no, I think it says Robert will sign.
Robert is the board president once this meeting is over, so to the extent that there are duties of the board president, those will be
You
carried
could
out
have
by
me sign
Robert.
them before, so you don't have to reprint them.
You need something signed before then, that's what Michelle's doing now, Gary's gonna sign it right now.
So, and that's why I was asking the question. That's why I was asking the question.
That's actually a good question. I don't think we caught that in the board policy, but
I'm not sure what are
To
you
me,
signing?
there's like the
I'm
business.
signing the rest.
Business that was done.
there's all the,
Oh, well, there's no reason Robert can't sign it, but for the fact that I guess
they're already printed with my name, and it's just more staff work.
That's what ink is for, so.
That's right, so this will take 2 seconds and I'll have them all signed, because
There is a precedent for that particular meeting, because when I was president in 2020, And the outgoing president at the time signed a lot of documents. After, the election, so, I mean.
But that's how the board policy was set up at that time.
Right.
Because the new president, to Chuck's point,
Right.
did not take official duties, did not begin until it began the new
Right.
year. The motivation, just so everybody, I'll remind everybody, the motivation for this change came from me, which it became very awkward at the end of last year when I was elected president as to, okay, well, who has responsibility for this and who has responsibility for that? And if something happens in the district, there are things in the board policy that say the president is
Right.
the person. Well, it's like, who really has that? We've had an election, we've had a change in leadership. And so it was my recommendation at the time we did the board policy to make that modification. The board concurred in that modification was
Right.
made. So that, but it was to eliminate that lame duck window.
Yeah, and
So-
Gary signing.
Yeah, there was some.
Rob, did you
I'm just
give-
about
Did
done.
you give your signed certificate to him to sign?
I did already sign the
Okay.
certificate.
Yeah, I gave it to him.
Okay.
So, was
Actually, no, we did that at the same time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that, though. That's an interesting, I didn't actually think about the signing piece of it. But we just saved Michelle a lot of reprinting of resolutions by doing it that way. Okay, proposed agenda items. Anything to put on the list? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports and requests, and we'll start with human resources.
We met, we were, DEI guideline parameters. Robert, Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the HR committee? Facilities committee.
I think the chief answered, fill in the gap. What we do that. I haven't seen it.
Okay, I do not have anything to add. We were pretty focused on the one project.
Fine.
Yeah, so finance committee.
We didn't need, everything was on the agenda, but we didn't need to have a meeting.
Okay. That's right, but I forgot that finance didn't. So liaison reports, town of Atherton. I do not have anything additional to report on town of Atherton. City of East Palo Alto.
East Palo Alto. Besides the ecumenical hunger program, I had the good fortune of last Saturday meeting with a group called YCS. They helped participate along with Drew Foundation, Health Foundation in East Palo Alto, with our local REPAC, that's parents group, and put together 60, as we call it, blessing bag. That's our annual gift of giving campaign we have in the community where we put together bags filled with some basic survival items and all the bags will be delivered to homeless. Everybody who participated in the event, which is 15 people that showed up, they opened the package, they laid it out on the bench, the table, and then we went around and put items in those blessing bags. And the person named Robert, who won rewards in the chili cook-off, and so we provided a chili for the group. We had a great time. We had sing song, Christmas carol, and all that. So that was great.
And has East Palo Alto elected their new mayor in that process, or is that coming up?
That's coming up.
Okay.
That's tonight.
Okay, that's very similar to Atherton. Atherton's tomorrow night.
Yeah, there's.
And I'll be unable to attend, but it was tomorrow night, so, okay.
They have a rotation.
Okay.
So Martha Barrera, we can call it rotation.
If they follow.
If they follow,
Okay,
they're not required to.
okay, got it. City of Menlo Park, Director Bernstein.
just two things. One is that, Menlo Park now has two city council members who who are going to be appointed or have been appointed.
Yeah.
They weren't elected, and they are unknowns. Nobody's heard of them, met them, knows who they are, knows anything about them. And, it's this idea we've been with this attorney down in Southern California fighting for democracy has now got it where nobody votes for them anymore. They just sort of, I mean, nobody runs for anything anymore. It's too bad. But the of importance here is relates to the JPA for the creek. And I don't know if anybody saw this information, but Valley Water has basically, they haven't done it, but they basically said they're gonna withdraw from the JPA, which is kind of shocking in a way, because they've sort of been the leaders up to now in some ways. And I was surprised to see, and I don't quite understand why, I saw this in a news report, that the dues to be a member of JPA, and I mentioned this to you, Rob, because you were saying, well, why don't we get to join? Well, it costs $350,000 to join, so there's a price tag to it. But Valley Water apparently was paying double, and I'm not quite sure why.
Did they have two seats?
No,
No,
Who does Valley
they're
Water
literally
represent?
paying the
I know.
most
they're a district.
They're
They're
Santa Clara
Yeah.
district.
Santa Clara County.
for the whole
Water
county.
I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Price Water didn't.
but then you, I don't know if you have this history, but they have been sort of the bad guys because they're the ones who channelized all the free flowing creeks in Santa Clara County and made them into sewers, basically. So, people have been very wary of it.
Yeah, I didn't have any history on it at all.
But anyway, I say that because the JPA now is really in turmoil. The projects have been held up. It's not clear there's gonna be any flood control. It's not clear whether we have an interest in flood control or not. And I just put that out. We don't have a liaison anymore to the JPA, for whatever reason. But, anyway, that's what's happening in Menlo Park.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. The County of San Mateo District.
No, I don't really have anything to add, except that I'm a little sad that we were able to do the after action report, presentation to the Board of Supervisors before Lawrence Slocum comes out. So I'm hoping that next year, whoever is the president of the board will be able to do that at that time. I'll keep on top of it. I think they're gonna be doing their reorg soon, or if they have, I think it's coming up.
Okay, pre-hospital JPA.
They sent out a memorandum where the county once again is requesting additional funds for a dispatch function. And the chief's part of the management separate group. And I don't know when I think our meeting's in February. If I'm still appointed to that group.
Yes.
If Robert feels I should continue. So they're supposed to have a meeting in February, and I'm sure that'll be one of the items of discussion is the added funds that the county wants for the dispatch function for the JP.
Assuming the
And that's about it.
Assuming the meeting.
Maybe they'll have a meeting, you're right, for you, if they do. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, ad hoc committee,
Nothing,
nothing to report.
yeah,
Okay, any other reports or requests of the directors?
I have a report.
Okay.
I just, we were all at the holiday lunch and service lunch on Monday, yesterday, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanna thank Michelle for putting that together and really just doing an outstanding job. And the chief, you were great too, and giving the 5-year recognition. I think everyone had a great time, so that's, that was fun, and it's a good way to end the year. So thank you. Also, I'm gonna kind of bring it up again. I've been hearing from residents, both like in the West Menlo area, Sharon Heights, and even in the unincorporated area, about the concerns they have about the Oak Grove parking lot for housing. So I just want to make sure that we're included in those conversations. I don't know what the impacts are gonna be. I don't even know when we're supposed to be included, but there's a petition going around. They've been talking to legislators and the supervisor who hasn't really responded. It's so, I just learned about some of this yesterday, but the concern has been ongoing for months now. So I just wanna put that on the radar, just so that we're aware that we're gonna have to, at least, we might have to listen to people's concerns about that. Cause they're taking over the 3 parking lots, I think, behind Amici's all the way down to behind Amici's, that set of restaurants, behind Coffee Bar, and then the other one behind near the post office. So it's gonna be that
Chase.
entire, behind the bank, Bow Wow Meow, the post office, all 3 of those lots are gonna be taken over for housing. And, you know, that's just on the radar right now. That's my concern.
I don't know.
Mixed housing or is it just
I don't
affordable?
know, I think it's only affordable housing, but that could change, Robert, because there's been so much dissension with residents, and not even just residents in our fire district, but I mean, I've heard from residents in Portola Valley who are concerned because they're worried that it's gonna affect some of the business, a lot of the businesses in downtown. They've got small businesses down there. So I don't know, it may just change at some, I don't know, I wanna get it on our radar, that's all. Just so that we understand that there might be, some impact, well, I wanna understand what the potential impacts are, and there may not be, I just don't know.
This, real quickly, this might, and for, future President Jones, to consider, it might be appropriate for us to have a board study session where we can talk about the ordinances, things
And the
that the board might
projects.
desire. And just for everyone's awareness, Chief Johnston has an opportunity to move to South Carolina, which we'll be doing May 1st-ish. So it might be wise for us to do that while John is still around and we have all of that knowledge here internally. And we can talk about that, Director Jones, on trying to schedule something like that. It'd probably be a good couple hours of us digging into it and trying to get direction from the board on what you might want to do in all of these different instances.
Right.
So should we reinstate like the joint meeting that we used to have between the fire board and the city councils? Cause maybe there's room for that too, on top of our study session. I don't know, I'm just.
It should be at the discretion of the new leadership.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just throwing out ideas, I just don't want the issues to be swept under the rug, that's all.
I think you know, with FYI, for the many years I've been on board, I think the relationship with the cities have kind of gone lax a little bit in a relationship. I think somewhere along the line, we forgot how to sure that work that out, build that.
My only comment on that is I think as a board, we could probably all do better in our liaison roles with attending the meetings and participating. I find, you know, I haven't made all the meetings, but I've made a lot of the Atherton meetings. And I went to some of their study sessions on the bigger issues where they really have more of a conversation than the formal public comment they do at meetings because at the meetings I tend to listen, I don't usually talk at them. At the study session, I actually was involved in the discussion. I think we could really advance the representation of the district in the cities by being more visible at their meetings. And it's a little bit of a check and balance. Even if you don't say anything, they know you're there. They know you're listening. And I think you've seen it reciprocated here with the vice mayor attending our meetings as well.
Yeah.
Probably on about the
For
same.
their liaison.
As their liaison to us, probably at about the same frequency I attend theirs. So just a comment.
That's a good idea. I think we continue.
I want to bring up another issue that's related to this, so discussion. And it relates to development fees charged to the fire district for our development. We've been very kind to the cities, and we have not charged them to review their projects and so forth. They have not reciprocated. in recent years. They've gone ahead and charged us. And I don't know if we need a policy about it, or Chief, if you know something about it, was this brought up at all at the joint meeting that you had?
Is this an item, maybe this is an item you wanna put on the future agenda?
Well, that's what
This is
Talk-
not, this is not an agenda item. I think we do one of two things. We can put it on the list to be discussed for potential agenda item at the next meeting. Or the facilities committee can take up the question and report back as part of facilities. Robert, do you have a preference on how you want to handle this? Will be at your turn, not mine.
Well, I think,
But it's not an agenda item
I
tonight.
think we need to discuss the items, and I just seem like there are a lot of information that you want to get out, so we need to figure out, so we can set the direction of going it back to the facility committee as to what they need to work on.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be to put it on the list of potential agenda items to be discussed next time.
Does that work for you?
yes, or maybe even a lesser thing of putting it on the facilities committee agenda and seeing what's going on with it. I don't know much, if I sounded like I knew much, I spoke badly because I don't know what's going on. But I'd like to know, so it was a request of mine to get some information about the development fees. So it could be on the whole agenda meeting, it could be on the facilities meeting, I don't care.
Okay. You can talk to the chief, advise Michelle accordingly. Okay. That brings us, unless there's any other reports or questions, to the president's report, and I do want to spend a couple minutes on a couple different things. One is the chief mentioned at the lunch yesterday, the Children's Hospital training, pediatric advanced life support training that was done. I actually had the opportunity to attend that training class. It was really phenomenal. I mean, you know, what the chief said about, it was a very real life situations. They were based on true cases within our district. One of them was a simulation associated with the family we recognized, the young girl and the CPR. And it actually started with the instructor doing CPR on a very expensive, very automated mannequin. And he's doing CPR on a trampoline, literally in the room when we walk in, when the crew walks in on the call. So it's a complete simulation. It's and on that particular one, not only did we do the full simulation, we actually put the person on the dummy on the gurney, still hooked up to all the computers. We got in the back of an ambulance, we drove around the parking lot for 3 minutes, and then practiced the handoff of the patient report and everything from the paramedic to the doctors, the simulation of the doctors. So this was by far the most real life training I've ever attended. I can tell you that everybody on the cruise, there was stress involved with it. And it was also very interesting because the quality of the technology they're using actually measures things like efficiency of compressions. Are you going deep enough? Is your speed proper? Being the EMT on it, I teamed up with Engine 5 crew. They were a 3-man crew. I was just going to observe, but they were the only 3-man crew that was there. Everybody else was 4 because it was the
So
tribe.
you were the fourth.
And then there was another engine that had 4 people on it. So they said, no, you're gonna be the 4th member of our crew, which I did the normal EMT thing and an advanced resuscitation, which is breathing and EMT, so bagging and CPR, I mean. And I probably did 90% of the CPR. The efficiency was 83% on a target of 60. I've never had my CPR measured. So it was a first for me, but it just gives you an idea. You know, what I can tell you is that it gives you just a phenomenal view of the capability. I did have a conversation, I believe it was with Todd Ellis, about the potential of, on trainings like that, is setting up an observation program for the directors, if the directors want to go and observe that kind of training. The in-house training they do is equally capable, and I think it's something all the directors really should see, is the quality of the training and the engagement by our teams in the training. I can tell you, having seen what I've seen in the couple trainings, but in particular this one, the notion that, you know, I live in the district and that's who's gonna show up at my door is a pretty comforting thought. You know,
Right.
these are real pros. These are,
When was this?
this was last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they ran it, I believe, 5 days in a row.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
so they hit all the shifts.
Wow.
So they rotate through to get all the different shifts in. So, and it's really, it's a paramedic level training, but it's about the paramedics' engagement with the EMTs and how the unit works together. Because one person doesn't resuscitate somebody. And in fact, the paramedic would, on our particular team, the captain was a paramedic as well. And so with two paramedics on it, it actually becomes the one paramedic really just directs the scene. Doesn't actually do very much hands-on. Second paramedic did all the hands-on. So it's just as impressive as it can get. And so I just thought it was really important I know the chief made comments in the bigger setting, but I think sharing the firsthand is worthwhile, and you would all be really impressed. These are really high quality paramedics and staff that we've got. So I'm really impressed. I've got more.
Oh, good, got it.
So
Can
that.
I want? Say something
Okay,
when you're
that's
done.
it, okay.
Yeah.
So that was my one comment about that particular class. And then I just wanted to, I don't have a long write-up, so I want to list a handful of things that I think the board this year should be really proud of having accomplished, because I think we accomplished a lot of stuff, and this is not a completely inclusive list, and I've probably forgotten some big things, but it's the ones that really came to mind. We started getting response data for the first time, I think, in the district's history. Accolades to the chief for, getting that process together. The board giving feedback on the nature of that report. It's in there every month. It's good quality statistical data. It should be a great foundation for the future for the board to make decisions about equipment, about staffing, and other things. Is response time data. And the good news is we started this year, so at the end of next year, we'll have 2 years of history too. So we start getting the historical data to actually make decisions. So that's one of them. The second one is the process of hiring PFM and managing the funds of the district. It's still generating $500,000 or $600,000 a month in interest income on it.
5% is what?
You'll notice in the report this time, there's a little bit of an offset. The principal values do fluctuate from time to time. The bond market's not as volatile as the stock market, but you'll see some fluctuation there. I believe that report was run right about the time we're at a low point in the bond market. There's been a lot of volatility in the bond market since the election. But the fact is, we have a professional group of people managing it. Accolades to Director Corrali leading the finance committee to make that all work.
Thank you.
And a tremendous amount of work by staff.
And Elaine, I'm gonna give a shout out to Elaine
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
sure, yeah.
We got the Station 1 project kicked off. The biggest project in the district's history, and I look at it and say we got it more than kicked off, because we also have a pretty good view of the financials associated with it. And again, through good fiscal management, I think it's a really cool situation when revenues really exceed expectations and it just doesn't get lost in operational costs. The chief and his staff stayed extremely disciplined to their budget despite revenues growing. That's what created all the reserves to allow us to do that. And so we largely have most of the money set aside. I don't have any concerns as a director that we'll have that project fully funded by the time the actual funds are needed for the Station 1 project. The board has a primary responsibility of strong fiscal management. And I, as president, I appreciate that the board put a lot of diligence into that. Director Bernstein is the chief questionnaire on all those items. And that's a good thing is, that we have, that everybody's paying attention to what's going on in the budgets and the numbers and details. Details do matter in that. It is also helpful that we have very strong financial management staff as well, and accolades to Francine and Elaine and the whole team there.
Yeah.
There's some good check and balances. I know Elaine's the guy we always hear from, but I know that the people above him are looking over his shoulder as well. So compliments to the board and staff on strong fiscal management. And I would point out that I think for almost every group this year, we redid labor agreements.
Yeah.
I think we touched almost every one of the labor agreements for the next, some of them have a 1-year term, some of them have a 2 to 3 year term. But we got through those and I thought we got through them in a pretty efficient process and without a whole lot of drama, and we got to a good fiscally responsible place for it. And then my last item that I would point out is just the rebuild of the community resilience team. That was a do-over at the start of this year. Staff had largely left. You heard the chief share all the engagement numbers. I appreciate the amount of outreach that the leadership team is providing in the community to try to connect with community members. And your statistics today were validation of a good rebuild process on that particular thing. And then if I kind of package all this together, and this is again something the chief guy said at dinner, and I'll close with it, is as far as my comments go, is it all led us to handle the biggest fire in San Mateo County history. And with incredible efficiency and capability. And it wasn't just a kind of a 4 to 6 hour emergency. That was probably a 12-hour emergency, but we had staff out there for another week almost, that we were staffing 24-hour coverage of that site. I know a number of the board members had an opportunity to go see what the teams worked on, everything else. But I would just tell you, having been involved in large scale disasters throughout the state in my emergency services tenure, that kind of success of an operation like that doesn't happen by accident. That's not just a bunch of people jumping on fire trucks and showing up. That's a result of extremely qualified, competent, systematic approach to how we respond, and how we partner and provide services with other agencies in our county. And we should all, as a board and staff certainly as well, should all take some real good comfort in knowing that we can handle something of that size and scale. And my compliments to the team there. Like I said, that's not an accident. That happens because of the quality of the organization that we have here at Menlo Fire. So that is my end of year remarks. And unless anybody has anything else to add.
Well, Virginia had something.
Yeah, Virginia.
Oh, I
Did you
know,
want to
you
show
know,
the article? Or
no,
the
it's not an
award?
article,
The
so
award.
the team, our local Daily Post, won the prestigious and coveted award for, they won the first place prize for breaking news in the San Francisco Press Club contest. And it was for the North Fair Oaks fire,
Oh,
and it was, they beat out major papers like the Chronicle and the Merc. So I mean,
That had
Mark,
international coverage.
yeah, but I know, and so, but Mark, I gotta give you credit and obviously, with it, Jason Martin, Matt Menard, whoever was there talking to the press and actually letting them write about it and do the story. I think that it says a lot about our local media that they're covering something like this, and it's important enough for them to do that. And they're good enough to actually win such an award like that, so,
It's very cool.
yeah.
I did have another request, real fast.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
There. In the finance report, and you don't have to look it up, Greg, you mentioned it, but you mentioned a number of things that happened in the October, during October. And I'm wondering if you could bring those back to the board with a little bit more detail. It mentions, for example, the CalPERS actuarial valuation, which I'd like to know more about. And the second thing was the GASB, the post-employment benefits valuation.
I believe those were attached to the board packet.
Yeah, but I wondered if you could comment upon them, about the trends, what it means, how it's gonna affect budgeting in the future, just your take on what happens there.
Good ask. Which person so, yeah.
We'll leave all that at the discretion of our future leadership team for the board.
President.
And so
What?
again, congratulations Virginia and Rob for being appointed for another term. And my congratulations, condolences, and thanks to Virginia and Robert for picking up the leadership here. And on that note, unless anybody has anything else,
Oh,
we'll.
I have one
Oh,
request.
when you're-
If I go down in this room, I would like Derek to do CPR on me. Yeah. I'd like that to be known. I think his efficiency is better than mine, so.
83%.
All right. Yeah, on that note, thank you very much. Oh, yes, I guess I can use the gavel for the second time as president of the board. Yeah.
Are we adjourned?
We are there.
At 9:21.
Congratulations, Robert.
I told Robert.